Hi, Alan here. And allow the educator in me to come out as I prepare you for a video piece that you're about to see. Dr. Louis Ignarro in 1998 received the Nobel Prize for his research on nitric oxide. The American Health Journal brings you this video of him in which he explains what nitric oxide is, why we should care, what the relationship is between nitric oxide and L-arginine, and what needs to be in any L-arginine formulation to make it optimally effective. As you watch this, I encourage you to compare what Dr. Ignarro is talking about in his general theory of arginine and nitric oxide and reducing heart disease to what is in Arginine Infusion. In fact, there should be a button below that if you click on it, will open up a new page and will bring you to a page where if you scroll down a bit, you'll see the ingredients that are in Arginine Infusion, and you'll see why that I think there's great synergy between Dr. Ignarro's research and what Arginine Infusion has been created to be. Now you need to understand, Dr. Ignarro is not a shill for any individual arginine producing company. It's simply up to individual companies to decide how closely they want to parallel what it is that Dr. Ignarro has researched, discovered, and when implemented properly, I personally believe reduces the risk of heart disease, according to the research that I've read. Thank you, and here we go.
The American Health Journal, bringing you the latest information on medicine, psychology, diagnosis, treatment, and prevention. Major medical advances are made each week, and each week the American Health Journal keeps you up to date.
Hello and welcome to this edition of the American Health Journal. I'm your host, Roger Cooper. In this special edition of the American Health Journal, we'll dedicate the entire show to the leading cause of death among men and women: cardiovascular disease, which affects an estimated 60 million Americans. Today, we have the opportunity of introducing you to Dr. Louis Ignarro, the 1998 Nobel Prize winner in medicine.
When I was in Europe, actually when I was in Naples, Italy, which is where my dad was born many years ago, this is when I first heard about the announcement of the Nobel Prize. And actually, I refused to believe it until my colleague who had invited me to give a lecture showed me on the computer, in the internet, at the Nobel site, that I was awarded the Nobel Prize in medicine. The Nobel Prize ceremony is unbelievable. It's celebrated in December. It's always celebrated on December 10th, which is the anniversary of Alfred Nobel's death. So it's a whole about 8 or 9 days of ceremony. So we give lectures, I think, on the 8th of December. We meet all kinds of interesting people, and of course we get a chance to converse with the other Nobel laureates. And then the ceremony is spectacular. It's held at the concert hall. Of course, it's attended and hosted by the king and the queen of Sweden. It's just a fantastic event. But one of the greatest feelings I ever had was getting up and walking to King Carl Gustav and receiving the Nobel Prize from his hands. That was a very moving moment for me, as was a couple of days later in the terminating ceremony, where I was actually asked to sign my name to a very special book that had the signatures of all of the Nobel laureates who preceded me from 1901 through 1997. And what they do is they ask you to flip through the pages first and look at all the names and signatures of the prior Nobel laureates. And then when you get to the last page and you see your own printed name, you sign your name with a special pen that they give you. And I remember flipping through the pages and seeing all kinds of names, Madame Curie, for example, all kinds of people, Ernest Hemingway. The one name that really got to me, though, was Albert Einstein, because I suddenly realized for the first time that I was going to be signing my name to the same book signed by Albert Einstein, and I added my name to that long list of incredible names.
Dr. Ignarro was dedicated over 30 years of research in the discovery of nitric oxide's benefits in preventing and even reversing cardiovascular disease. The benefits don't stop there. It can also reduce high blood pressure, lower cholesterol, and age-proof your cardiovascular system. Dr. Ignarro will also explain what nitric oxide is, the important role of L-arginine and L-citrulline in boosting the production of nitric oxide, and also other necessary supplements, including vitamins, exercise, and diet, all the ingredients to a more healthy and better quality of life.
Coronary artery disease occurs when there's an impairment of blood flow to the heart. The heart has its own circulatory system, and that circulatory system is called the coronary arteries. When people develop atherosclerosis or high cholesterol levels, this can result in plaque deposition, plaque formation in the arteries. And as those plaques grow and grow, they can obstruct the flow of blood. This can lead to a decrease in the flow of blood and therefore the flow of nutrients and oxygen to the heart, to the point where when you need your heart during exercise or walking up the stairs or changing a flat tire or almost anything else, if the heart does not get enough blood or oxygen, it's going to feel pain due to ischemic damage. That is essentially a heart attack. Nitric oxide is a chemical or a molecule, or you can even call it a hormone, that is present in the body, which functions in certain specific ways within the cardiovascular system. It's our way of protecting ourselves, literally, against cardiovascular disease. It's a molecule, for example, that lowers the blood pressure. It's our way of preventing strokes and heart attacks. The arteries make nitric oxide for the purpose of lowering the blood pressure, improving blood flow to organs, because nitric oxide is a vasodilator. It widens or relaxes the arteries so that more blood can flow through. That's going to lower the pressure within the plumbing, within the arterial system. And again, it protects against coronary artery disease because it can lower the bad cholesterol levels and so on. So it's the body's natural way to protect against heart disease, provided we make enough of it. Nitric oxide is considered to be a lifesaver because it's the body's natural way of protecting against cardiovascular disease. Cardiovascular disease is the #1 killer, not only in the U.S., but throughout the world. And so the body can protect against all of this heart disease by generating more and more nitric oxide. When nitric oxide becomes deficient, this is when the barriers break down, this is when the protection is lost, and the individual is very sensitive and very susceptible to heart disease. And again, nitric oxide is protective because it can keep your blood pressure down in the normal range. High blood pressure causes heart attacks, causes strokes, and can lead to atherosclerosis or coronary artery disease. Nitric oxide can prevent all of these things. Arginine is an amino acid. There are about 20 or so amino acids that are the building blocks of all proteins. Proteins that you eat and proteins that are in your body, like your muscle and skin and so on. But arginine plays a unique role in that arginine is the one amino acid that the body uses to produce nitric oxide. Okay? There are two amino acids that the body actually can use. One is arginine, the other is citrulline. But the primary amino acid, which is converted to nitric oxide in the body, is arginine. And it's very important, therefore, to maintain normal, healthy levels of arginine at all times, because when we develop certain cardiovascular and related diseases that are characterized by a deficiency in nitric oxide, the main reason for the deficiency in nitric oxide is a deficiency in this amino acid arginine. So if you have too low a level of arginine, you're not going to make sufficient amounts of nitric oxide to protect your cardiovascular system against disease. And so arginine is one of those amino acids that you actually have to take in from the outside. That is, you have to include it in your diet. And we're lucky that so many different proteins contain arginine, but sometimes even though we may eat healthy and eat normal amounts of protein, if you have a deficiency in arginine, you're not going to get sufficient amounts from the diet. So you may want to consider supplementing your diet with extra arginine. Nitric oxide is something you cannot simply take from the outside. You cannot take it in a pill. You can't put it in in water or juice or anything like that, because nitric oxide is actually a gaseous substance. It's a gas, and it's very unstable. It doesn't last for more than a second or two. So you can't really take nitric oxide. What you can do, though, is you can take the ingredient nitric oxide. What you can do, though, is you can take the ingredients that the body uses to make nitric oxide, and you can take the ingredients that will stabilize the nitric oxide, prevent it from breaking down and lasting longer in your body. And so you could do this by taking certain amino acids like arginine and citrulline, and then you can take certain antioxidants like vitamin C, vitamin E. There are many other kinds of antioxidants. And so by taking these different ingredients, these different natural ingredients all at the same time, you will maximize your body's ability to make the nitric oxide. And so that's how you boost your nitric oxide production.
In this next part of the American Health Journal, Dr. Ignarro tells us the benefits of using nitric oxide as part of our daily regimen of diet and exercise, as well as how you can learn more about his research, the age-proofing of your cardiovascular system, and his three-step plan to a healthier heart, which he explains in detail in his new book, No More Heart Disease. But first, we spoke with Dr. Andrew Myers about the role nitric oxide plays in our body.
Nitric oxide is naturally produced by cells that line the arteries, and those cells producing nitric oxide help to control and regulate the blood flow throughout the body. So when the blood flow is regulated, blood pressure can be lowered, muscles can be delivered oxygen and nutrition much more efficiently. So nitric oxide becomes this important chemical mediator in terms of helping the body do what it was meant to do, to perform better, to function optimally, and in many cases, when you have disease or deficiency of NO, you see big problems, like high blood pressure or even heart disease.
The benefits of nitric oxide are many, and they focus mainly in the cardiovascular system, but this also impacts on other systems as well. Because nitric oxide can keep your blood vessels healthy by increasing blood flow, what happens is that the nitric oxide makes sure that all the organs in the body receive the normal amount of blood and therefore nutrients and oxygen that's required. In addition, nitric oxide can interfere with the blood clotting process, and so it can prevent unwanted blood clotting. You know, when people suffer from a heart attack, in many cases this is due to a blood clot that develops in the coronary arteries that feed blood to the heart. By the same mechanism, when a person gets a stroke, this is generally due to the development of a blood clot in the cerebral arteries that carry blood to the brain. And so you don't want this to occur normally. The only time you want a blood clot to occur is when you injure yourself, you get a cut, and you want a clot to form because that forms a plug and prevents the excessive loss of blood. But you don't want those blood clots to occur in a normal, inside, within an artery in the brain or heart. So nitric oxide is something we make to prevent that unwanted clotting of blood. When nerves stimulate different parts of the body, they do so by releasing a chemical. Well, the major chemical in the brain that is released from many nerves is nitric oxide. And this nitric oxide is well known today to facilitate memory and learning. No question about it. This has been shown in animals, it's been shown in humans, and what we've noted now is that in memory and learning disorders, particularly Alzheimer's disease, there is a deficiency, a marked deficiency in the formation of nitric oxide in those regions of the brain that regulate memory and learning. And in fact, a number of pharmaceutical companies are developing drugs that stimulate nitric oxide formation in those regions of the brain. And the early clinical studies show that if you boost nitric oxide formation in the brain, you can restore memory and learning. So I think there's hope for everyone who's suffering from a memory and learning disorder. not only does nitric oxide decrease the blood pressure and protect against heart disease and so on, but let's keep in mind one of the major effects of nitric oxide in the body, and that is to function as a vasodilator. This means it's going to widen or relax the arteries, and when that happens, of course, you're going to increase the flow of blood to the other end. Okay? Well, we made an interesting discovery back in 1990 when we showed that the nerves that go to the erectile tissue of men and women actually release nitric oxide as the signaling molecule or neurotransmitter. And before we made that discovery, the neurotransmitter was not known. And if you don't know what the nerves are releasing to stimulate a function, it's almost impossible to develop rational drugs to treat a disease. And so once we showed that those nerves release nitric oxide, one of the pharmaceutical companies, of course, developed a big program to look at that and study that. They extended my research further, and voila, they came up with the drug Viagra, which is the first orally available drug that's useful in treating impotence or erectile dysfunction. And so the way Viagra works simply is to enhance or increase the actions of nitric oxide. Nitric oxide is a vasodilator, which means it's going to widen those blood vessels and lower the pressure within the blood vessels. And it doesn't lower blood pressure if the blood pressure is normal. And that's the beauty about the natural substances present in our body. The nitric oxide senses when the blood pressure is abnormally elevated. And then it steps in to reduce that blood pressure back down to the normal range, not below normal. And it's the most effective substance we have in the body, the most effective hormone to lower the blood pressure and keep it out of the high range. And it's something that you want to do all the time. You want to have sufficient amounts of nitric oxide around all the time to keep that blood pressure down, because high blood pressure can lead to a heart attack. The single most common cause of cardiovascular disease is a persistent high blood pressure that the person does not control, because that pressure against the arteries will eventually tear apart the cells, rip apart the arterial cells, and this is going to cause irreversible damage to the arteries. This will start the development of a plaque formation, cholesterol buildup in the arteries. This will begin to precipitate blood clotting, which means you can get a blood clot in the heart, which can cause a heart attack. You can get a blood clot in the brain, which can cause a stroke. So nitric oxide is the body's natural way to prevent all of these things from happening. One of the most common causes of a heart attack or a stroke is the development of atherosclerosis, which is nothing more than an inflammatory disease of the arteries. And this comes about when you have cholesterol buildup. In other words, a bad cholesterol, LDL cholesterol buildup will actually cause a change in the structure of the arteries. The blood will begin to clot. There'll be all kinds of debris clinging to one another, and this constitutes the buildup of plaque in the arterial wall, which can obstruct blood flow, and worse yet, if those plaques become disrupted for any reason, they can travel to different parts of the body, and they travel to the brain, you can have a stroke. If they travel to the heart, you can have a heart attack. The way the body protects naturally against the development of high cholesterol is through nitric oxide. Nitric oxide functions to keep the balance of the various lipids in the arterial system. So it helps to maintain the good cholesterol and the bad cholesterol at healthy levels. Okay? And so some of your very famous drugs, and I think everybody's heard of the statin drugs. There are many different companies that make different kinds of statin drugs, and they're great in reducing your bad cholesterol. Anybody who has a cholesterol level of 250 or 300 or higher, after taking statins, sometimes that level could be reduced back into the 100 range. And the way those statins work is by stimulating nitric oxide formation in the arteries. So, if you have sufficient amounts of nitric oxide in your healthy arteries, you don't have to take the statin drugs. Nitric oxide Is a very important role in age-proofing your cardiovascular system. And really what I mean by that is that if you can prevent the development of cardiovascular disease, guess what? You're going to live longer. So you're age-proofing your cardiovascular system. There's no question that immediately after birth, lives, the whole concept of life is really downhill. I mean, that's why you hear many scientists say that life is a dying process. And the reason is you're at your healthiest the instant you're born. From that point on, actually the nitric oxide levels in your body gradually begin to decrease. But they really start decreasing when you're in your 30s or 40s. So you need to take whatever steps are necessary to keep that nitric oxide at a normal level by boosting your nitric oxide production. And in doing that, you will absolutely live longer. The quality of your life will be much better as you live longer. And the one bodily chemical that can do this is nitric oxide. Antioxidants are very important to incorporate in your diet. You can get antioxidants from all kinds of foods: fresh vegetables, fruits, fish. Fish oil is loaded with antioxidants, and also certain herbs have antioxidants and other plant materials. So garlic and green tea are two foods that are rich in antioxidants. And why is that good? Because antioxidants can protect your nitric oxide against breakdown. Oxygen can actually break down nitric oxide. And what antioxidants do is what the name says they do. They're antioxidant, antioxidation. So by blocking or preventing oxidation, you prevent the breakdown of nitric oxide, and by doing that you can boost your levels of nitric oxide. And there are certain kinds of foods and herbs that are very potent in this regard. That is, very small amounts can really protect the nitric oxide against breakdown. And one of those is garlic, and the other is green tea. And I'm particularly pleased with the garlic because I'm Italian. I follow a Mediterranean lifestyle in terms of diet. And I think I add garlic to everything except my coffee and my tea. And so I think we're blessed with the ability to be able to take garlic as a very healthy way to boost your nitric oxide production. And the same thing with green tea. There's a very long history of the health benefits, especially the cardiovascular health benefits of green tea. And that's because of the presence of these antioxidants. Other antioxidants, just to give you an example, include vitamin C, vitamin E, and there are many others. The antioxidants are good because they can stabilize the nitric oxide in the body. When your body makes nitric oxide, if there are factors that can lead to the destruction of nitric oxide, you're going to have very low levels, even though your body may be making a lot. And one of the ways to keep those levels elevated is to take antioxidants, and one of them is folic acid. So folic acid can function, one of its functions is to protect the nitric oxide against destruction. But another function of folic acid relating to heart health is to actually lower the levels of an abnormal amino acid which we call homocysteine. This is one of the markers for heart disease. There are various markers for heart disease, but if people have elevated blood levels of homocysteine, which is a tongue twister, this is a sign that things are going awry with your cardiovascular system. Folic acid is one of the few vitamins that can actually reduce the levels of homocysteine and protect you against heart disease. Exercise is really a very principal component in one's lifestyle to protect against cardiovascular disease. I point out that a healthy diet is very important, but also just as important as a healthy diet is exercise. There's no question about this. I think everyone's known for centuries that exercise is good for your health, but only recently has it been determined why exercise is good for your health. And the reason is that exercise boosts or stimulates nitric oxide production. When you exercise, your heart is beating faster and stronger. This causes an increase in blood flow through the arteries. When the blood flows faster through the arteries, it actually stimulates nitric oxide formation. And that makes good sense because nitric oxide is a vasodilator. It widens the arteries in order to accommodate this increase in blood flow. But at the same token, the NO is protecting against heart disease as well. It's not just increasing or accommodating this increase in blood flow. So we know today that exercise is the most important way in which your body makes nitric oxide, clearly. And so it is important to incorporate at least a mild, perhaps a moderate exercise program almost daily in your life. Those individuals who lead a sedentary lifestyle are making very, very low amounts of nitric oxide. And heart disease, diabetes, and so on, obesity, these are diseases that are associated with sedentary lifestyles, with a lack of exercise and a deficiency in nitric oxide. So by exercising, you can increase your NO production. You can by doing that, by boosting nitric oxide production, you can ensure yourself of a healthy cardiovascular system. I wrote my new book, No More Heart Disease, in order to try to convey my important health message to everybody in this country and everybody in the world. You know, it's one thing to conduct important research and have it recognized by your peers and be awarded the Nobel Prize in Medicine, which is all very, very nice, but the discoveries we made have an incredible impact on humankind. And so it's important to get that message not just to the other scientists, but also to the people who are suffering from heart disease. And so I kept asking myself, how can I translate this basic science information, you know, to the lay people of the world? And so I thought of two ways. One was to develop a product that can boost nitric oxide formation, and the other was to write a book that everyone could understand, a book that would motivate people to changing their lifestyle so that they can produce maximal amounts of nitric oxide. And so this is why I wrote that book, which was no easy task. You know, I'm used to writing many scientific articles, but to try to write a book that everyone could understand was quite an effort. But I think I've been successful in doing that.
No More Heart Disease is a great book because what it does is it really puts the science of nitric oxide at a level that the average person can really understand, grasp, and then act upon. Because it talks about a holistic approach to living better and improving your health through a simple set of measures that lead to boosting your nitric oxide levels naturally.
Join us next time for the American Health Journal when we bring you more in our ongoing series of reports for your better health. If you have any questions about today's topics or for the doctors you've seen on today's show, you can contact us at 1-800-303-3200. For the American Health Journal, I'm Roger Cooper.